Hello everyone, thank you for joining us for this webinar today. I'm Charlie at Authentise. I've just started in marketing and your presenter today is going to be Keith, who is our Agile manufacturing leader. So he's going to be talking to us about tooling and job shop management. We're just going to keep it short and sweet, 20 minutes, where we'll have hopefully some time for some questions at the end. You're all muted, so if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. I'll put them to Keith, whether it might be halfway through or if there's loads of them, we'll go through them all at the end. Alternatively, we'll put our emails at the end of the webinar, so you can just contact us there. Okay, over to you, Keith.
Brilliant. Thanks, Charlie. I take it you can hear me okay, and I'm guessing you can see the screen okay. So, fabrication and job shops are, just like all the rest of the manufacturing world, under a lot of pressure at the moment, a lot of change. The forces that affected many other industries with respect to digitization are now starting to land quite heavily in manufacturing. As we all know, things like Industry 4.0 are starting to arrive. For many, ideas of Industry 4.0 and digital transformation are something that are a little bit out of their immediate understanding, perhaps, and certainly something that seems more aspirational in many cases. But it's really starting to come home in our industry for fabrication and tooling in particular. You can see from this chart just how much data is now being created in the mold making industry, right? One of the subsets of fabrication and tooling, of course. In this particular case, this is industrial big data increase from IoT applications. This is mirrored across the manufacturing industry as a whole, of course. It's not just tooling and fab shops that are affected by this. But I do think that the tooling and fab shops have a rather unique difference about them that causes the adoption of Industry 4.0 technologies to be a somewhat troublesome idea. Now, the idea of digital transformation in Industry 4.0 stands, for the most part, to the customers I speak to day in, day out, spectacularly intimidating. The fact of the matter is that most companies are looking for something simpler. Now, everybody's looking for Industry 4.0, don't get me wrong. You can see that statistic from the right on the left there, 77.3% of CIOs recognize that digital transformation is important. This is last year, moving into this year. But when they start to look at what would dramatically improve ROI right now, they're looking at some fairly simple things, right? Automation of the next most easily automated IT function and or worker-like task. What we're not looking for is pan-galactic transformation. What we're not looking for are gargantuan IT projects that take forever to implement and never really land. What we're looking for are some fairly pragmatic and sensible tools that can make a difference in a short period of time. We'll talk a little bit about that idea shortly. When we look to the folks who are actively involved in industrial engineering and manufacturing, it becomes fairly simple to see that if we're looking at making incremental improvements and delivering ROI, we start to see really where we can start to add value very dramatically. Assemblers, fabricators, frontline supervisors and workers, freight laborers, stock, material movement, inspectors, testers and assemblers. All of these people absolutely dwarf the amount of people working in some of the more traditional environments in manufacturing. So we know now what sort of technologies we kind of want, right? Simple incremental improvements to some of our workflows. And we know to whom we need to help. But here comes the challenge, right? When I look at what's actually going on a shop floor, day in, day out, I see a lot of this, right? Sticky notes, Kanban charts, great. But then DOS prompts, seriously, DOS prompts. Windows NT in one case was kicking around recently. On a good day, I'll see Excel. Yet when I think about fabrication and tooling and I think about the kind of critical elements that these things are creating, whether it's a prototype on one end of the spectrum, which is going to be potentially the future of the company, or whether it's a piece of tooling which dramatically is going to affect potentially thousands maybe in some cases millions of parts. It absolutely astounds me that we are willing to leave these things to chance like this. Now, don't get me wrong, there's some real pragmatic sense around some of these things. They're massively simple to do, they're massively accessible to everybody, they're simple, clear, and visible. But why, oh why can't we have that from an IT perspective? Why are we having to resort to sticky notes stuck to white plastic boards in shops? There's got to be something better we can do. When we start to look at what these guys need in a practical way, it all comes down to workflow, work, organization, and management. It really is that kind of simple. So we start to look at what most people are doing from a process perspective. And we start to look in particular at ideas like this. This is an instantiation of the stage gate methodology, which most industrial manufacturers use today. 80% of companies in North America today use some sort of form of stage gate. So this sounds like a great idea, right? You spend some time discovering what you need to do, you review that with the team, you go through the next gate, you define the scope as a result of the discovery that you've had. And once you've got a scope outlined, you review that with the team, and so on and so forth. Most of you are familiar with this process, so I'm not going to dwell on it. However, this process, is important to remember, came out of the manufacturing world in about the 1960s and was a result of a whole bunch of Toyota improvements, amongst others, on my end. Well, the 1960s, half of what we know today didn't exist. And what's more, these processes are very dependent on the creation of physical artifacts, which increasingly, with the world of digital twins, is no longer a constraint. Yet here we are, doing the same thing, the same way, for the past 50 years, and really probably not getting the sort of benefit that we want. What we need to do is take a different look at this. What I like to point to is some work that McKinsey have done. McKinsey have taken those ideas of what it takes to deliver a digital twin of a process or a workflow, or indeed a manufacturing work, and started to articulate what's needed, and have started to take lessons learned from the software development world and apply them to this world of digital twins. And what we end up with is, more modern agile processes that embed ideas of continuous improvement, of continuous deployment within them, and start to have us be able to move faster and more nimbly and in a more agile manner than ever before. And that's making a tremendous difference. But that does require a bit of a change in working practice. If we look to what we've traditionally done along that stage gate process, it's something like this, where we go from design to engineering to manufacturing planning to manufacturing execution, quality, and implementation, taking a gate at every point. What this means is that go from A to B can take quite a while. This new world order would have a different attitude, a more vertically stacked attitude, where all of the people from design through to maintenance potentially get involved in making a change to either a manufacturing process or the product itself and the manufacturing process along with it. They are enabled to make the changes that they need. What they can do over time is make smaller changes much, much more rapidly, really driving a journey. And that's a big difference.
Quick question. How do you
Yes.
manage that change, Keith?
Oh, so changing from A to B is quite a challenge. When we look to the software world, what we've seen is that typically to go from A to B is a big jump for most people. So what's tended to happen, and I'll come back to this later, is that you end up trying to implement a new way of doing things on the bottom while running with the old way as well. Gartner call that bimodal operations. So there's a new team who do get the new paradigm and want to make the changes doing the bottom piece, where the bread and butter of the business continues to run on the top. And that way you get both organizations running together. Hopefully that answers that question, Charlie.
Yes, thank you.
Cool. So the difference here really is that organizationally and executionally, there's a difference in attitude. We're implementing improvements incrementally instead of all at once. This means lots of little low-risk changes rather than a big, expensive change. That enables us to do something different on our journey to improvement, right? So let's get simple, right? There's a picture of where we are and a picture of where we want to be. In the old world, we might have taken that in one big jump. In the new world, we can take a lot of smaller chunks, steps to get to that new world order, that new way of doing things. And we outline a roadmap, as we all do. But in the real world, our journey is not that simple. And this is where those small little changes that we make, understanding what changes we implement, are important, because what we can start to do is change our trajectories. We can end up in the same state of where we need to be, but getting there, we can take a number of smaller, thoughtful steps, data-driven steps to get there. So really the question becomes one of band line, keeping along roughly that green line within some bandwidth so that we can start to avoid this, the worst case, perhaps one of the worst cases, where you end up having taken a very big risk and then you end up in a place that's not good and you don't know why, which is more of the old world. Or even worse still, not even starting it at all. Right, so these ideas on the right here are many of the key ideas that you see when it comes to continuous improvement and continuous deployment for agile systems in the product development world, particularly for software and increasingly for manufacturing. Think big, but start small, act small, don't compromise, grow fast, don't be afraid of failure. And importantly, learning, adapting and learning, continuously improving. That's what this is all about. Very simple idea, but very key. That also has some implication for the way we're organized. McKinsey has something to say about that too. So instead of a top-down bureaucracy, which has tended to happen with the big decisions in the big way and the big changes, what we're looking at is a much smaller incremental changes that are driven more pragmatically and more with the focus of the customer in mind, typically from the ground up. So those vertical stacks of folks that I talked about earlier become empowered to make the decisions that matter actually on the ground. That's a key reason why some companies like Tesla, for example, have been able to accelerate and move beyond other companies in the same industry. It's not just a question of they've got some cool cars. You know, 10 years ago, they were barely making cars, yet somehow they've caught up and in many cases overtaken some of the traditional rivals. And it's not just because they're making electric cars. They're doing something different. And this, what you're seeing here, is part of the difference of the way they're doing it. So we have this traditional world order that's a bit linear, quite staged, very sequential, well understood, very centralized knowledge and expertise. We start to look at automation, great for productivity and efficiency, versus this new world order that's a bit more digital, a little bit more interconnected, a bit better for less well understood processes where something is new, but we can also add autonomous, decentralized, self-optimizing groups around some of these things. It's a slightly different way of working. And somehow, Charlie, to your earlier question, we need to marry these two worlds together. And the right-hand side is significantly different from the rest. So this has implication, obviously, for the way we do our research and development, very clearly, right? Particularly key as we start to figure out what products work, what technologies work, and what do not, what processes work. That takes us into prototypes and bespoke builds, being able to do this efficiently and not leaving it to paper and sticky boards and guesswork to drive it. And the tool and fab shops that feed these guys, whether it's a spare part being implemented as a result of some maintenance requirements, or indeed for a prototype, and through into maintenance and support. There's quite a lot there. So we here at Authentise are quite excited because we are starting to have been working on a platform that we believe can bring some of that agility to manufacturing operations and industrial engineering operations. We've been working for some time, particularly in the additive world, of enabling that agility. We're now starting to take those same tools that have made us successful in the additive world and start to deliver some award-winning data applications to the rest of the manufacturing and industrial engineering environment. so that we can start to drive those more agile manufacturing workflow operations. Our vision is for a contextual platform that starts to integrate different parts of the processes that our customers work on together. An open platform that enables them to plug in the tools that they need, as they need, when they need. Whether it's something as simple as design up front, at the front end of the process, or a maintenance task or tool at the end of the process. And driving those consistently with a number of key capabilities, some of which you can see here. Being able to manage the agile management process. Being able to deliver digital work instructions, not paper-based ones. Being able to embed that core knowledge and data about the process into an environment that gives you real-time execution visibility in a way that mirrors what's actually going on the shop floor. Being able to give folks insight into where the status of their work is and being able to traceably track what's going on from a compliance perspective, whether it's something like FDA compliance, which we have, or ITAR. But what's really key is the bottom right one, right? Enterprise integration. We are quite fortunate in the work we've already done because we have a ridiculous amount of connection points to other softwares and machine tools so that we can start to integrate the people and the technology and the manufacturing machines that actually are delivering all this. As you might imagine, as a result, we've got a whole bunch of applications and technologies, which I'm not going to dwell on too much, that we can deliver flexibly to meet our customers' needs in much the same way that they're actually looking to manufacture their products in the future. And critically, as I mentioned earlier, a whole bunch of enterprise integration points, whether it's PLM, ERP, sustainability tools, topology optimization tools, you name it, we've kind of got them in our tool set here. We're increasing those daily. And we're seeing quite a lot of take up across a number of use cases, not just for fabrication and tooling. We talked about additive manufacturing. Of course, we're expanding beyond that, not just for additive, but into medical devices, for example, being able to deal with materials and inventory management, prototype production generally, and of course, tooling, fabrication and maintenance. So we think we've got a lot to offer, being able to help customers get the flexible operations they need, get that effective oversight that they need, on a proven, secure backbone with some seamless integration to drive with the tools they use to drive those processes. Really that simple. Some good examples, right? So here in the UK, a company called Tinsley Bridge, based in Sheffield, in this case, manufacturing torsion bars. You can see one of our tools there that they're using on the right-hand side, workflow-driven application on the shop floor. In this particular case, he's signing in with his ID card, and that's driving some of the work that he's executing there live on the application. And you can see saving us lots of time, both from a management perspective and a workflow execution perspective as well. I think the statistic, if I remember rightly, is like 10% extra production capacity we've realized just through these simple tools alone. Another example here from Beulah, getting a more digitally visible and controlled shop floor. And really sort of our jewel in the crown, if you will, is what we've been able to achieve with a company called Boeing, where we are really some of the backbone of what they've got for their additive manufacturing and agile manufacturing methods. Some incredible statistics there. Not the only place we've been getting a lot of kudos. You can read this slide faster than I can probably talk about it, but there's a lot of great customers that we have, Nike, Xerox, Boeing, Danfoss, you can read those. And be getting quite a lot of kudos, not just for additive manufacturing, but well beyond as well. And the reason, of course, is the success that we've been delivering to our customers, whether it's improving throughput, improving completion rates, reducing on-hand inventory, it's always a good one, and so on. So whether you're a job shop or a fab shop, or whether you're involved in R&D or engineering and maintenance, we're keen to expand our footprint as quickly as possible and really open up the doors to what's possible here, a lot more. So I think we must be close to our 20 minutes, Charlie.
Very good timing. We're at 19 minutes in. If anyone's got any questions, can you pop them in the chat and we'll get back to you. If not, Keith and I both have emails, so it's either Keith or Charlie at authentise.com. if you want to get in touch with us that way. I haven't seen anyone in the chat yet, so I think that might be it. Perfect, bang on 20 minutes.
Perfect.
All right, thank you then.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you. Bye.